This is Jason Reed Pratt, author of Cry of Justice. Have you ever been playing a chip and hex war game of moderate or greater complexity that you set aside to do some other things for a couple of weeks and then had no idea when you got back to it what your plans even were, or how likely it was that the Poles would thwart your evil Nazi invasion of their country after all and started World War II in Europe? Me too! Fortunately, it's a lot easier to reset up the last played position and stats for everyone in VR Design's computer-instead board game of Decisive Campaigns, the Blitzkrieg from Warsaw to Paris, from Matrix and/or Slitherine games, which I'm multiplaying with Barthheart from the Grogheads forum. All I have to do is click the load game button, and after a surprisingly long time loading, considering I own a supercomputer weighing more than 70 pounds, which looks like the Black Monolith from the 2001-2010 movies, and which I like to call the Presence, Turn 8, September 15th, 1939. That could be good or bad news for me. We'll see in a minute. Clear skies these 2 days for my air power to look around and maybe drop a few bombs. Air power is a lot weaker in this game than in many war games. That's more historically accurate, I suppose? I also have used my air grouping so much that I'm doubtful I've been able to shoot down any Barthian crafts. I haven't noticed any on the replay logs, but I haven't been paying close attention either. Let's artificially draw out suspense about East Prussia by starting down with the Slavic Nazi fanboys. If the map looks bigger than usual and proportioned a little oddly, that's because I forgot to set my desktop resolution to 720. I don't recall if this is 900 or 1080 resolution, but I usually set it to 720 so that the labels on the chips are easier to read. Sorry? You can see more of the board at a time this way, however, whether zoomed out or all the way in. The main thing to notice in this first zoomed out shot of the southern half of the map is that I've cleaned up Barth's counter-blitzers at last over here, and have re-secured my road and rail lines. I do still have a few blown bridges to remake out here, so some engineers are on the way, but everyone else is heading back to their original groups as fast as they can. I'm not worried about these little blips of Polish hexes down here, as I'm sure they don't have enemies and they aren't on a road or a rail. You should also note that we've made a lot of progress eastward generally, but the Slavic Nazi army, such as they are, still hasn't made much headway eastward toward Lvov and Barth's southern evacuation point. So let's zoom in there for a minute. You can see from the little red crossed out circles that a lot of bridges remain to be fixed. More than I've got handy engineers for, but by next turn I'll have forged something of a supply path for the Slavic Nazi headquarters east over the Vislop River? Something like that. Anticipating this help, the Slavics have finally crossed over again to probe toward the nearest orange dot city, Przemysl. The 2nd Panzer Division has already forged across it in the drier weather to join their quite out-of-supply 1st Brigade, struggling to get back near any headquarters. Ideally, they'll be probing east while the 4th Panzer Division pushes more northward. Already helping the 62nd and 27th Infantry Divisions to cut off supplies to the Krakow pocket westward. The 3rd Infantry Division has also cleared a supply path to the west across their river, though you can't see that in this shot, and are working back eastward to the main group, since it doesn't seem likely Barth will be able to run anyone in the Krakow pocket down to this road to annoy my supply line again. Why? Well, because I've already got a lot of troops in the process of cutting off their retreat. Granted, the brigades down on the southern side, and now eastern side, of Krakow have been badly weakened by Barth's brilliant early counter-blitzing, but I'm steadily repairing the supply lines into the area, whereas their situation will only deteriorate. Unfortunately, I've got to take Krakow eventually, and hold it at the end of the game. The 5th Panzer Division up there, and its fellow divisional brothers somewhere, badly need their HQ back from counter-blitzing, and I've railed it across the map as far as I can to help with that eventually, just north of this snapshot. I'm also hoping I can finally surround and knock out Barth's Polish 1st Infantry counter-blitzer from Zakopane down south there, which, as bad off as we are, must be starving by now. Notching northward, the big yellow arrow shows my divisions here, and the 10th Army generally, have almost totally collapsed and eliminated Barth's defensive line, with a few potential holdouts running for the nearby mountains. Several divisions, including the daring 4th Panzer, which precipitated this collapse by rolling around behind them a few turns ago, are probing out east, north, and south of their retreat to see what else is out there and to cut them off farther. That yellow line traced from the 8th Division headquarters shows what I was talking about earlier, the need to rescue and refresh 10th Panzer from their slog through the woods. Altogether, this portion of the front has combined so much that it hardly resembles the more discreet thrusts earlier in the game. Mapping northward again, the 8th Army's divisions remain generally strung out around Lotz, mostly south of it, as my engineers still zip around trying to fix the bridge network. Lotz looks like a tough nut to crack, and unless I can find a way to snap off its supply lines to Warsaw, I'm starting to wonder if I'll find a way to do it. But with time running out, and the bridge is finally repaired, I will probably surge 13th and 11th Corps forward next time to start noshing on some pieces that Barth has had to necessarily stick out a little, where I can surround them on 3 or 4 sides if I can force one of them to retreat. 13th Division, meanwhile, is probing hard toward Lotz and meeting no resistance. It looks like they might start snapping off some major supply routes next turn between Warsaw and all remaining points south. I'll have to use the 1st Panzer Division as guards to secure their line of advance, I suppose, against a temporary counterpush by Barth behind them. Moving up again to the 4th Army's divisions and the Oberkommand headquarters, all resistance in the final significant pocket between them and Warsaw has almost ceased, and Guderian's 19th Corps divisions will be released next turn to join his other divisions for the pushing probe toward Warsaw, where we can expect to find Barth's final defense. The guest 302nd Infantry Division at the bottom left has finished securing the road and rail line at long last, and I'll be shipping them eastward quite a bit, I expect, next turn. Guderian's Corps is also helping Falkenrath's Corps a little in threatening to cut off the supply line to the Polish East Prussia counterpush, and that leads us up to the answer about Barth's message. It may not quite look like it here, but Barth has probably given up trying to push into East Prussia and has started definitely pulling back his troops toward Warsaw while he still has some chance to keep their supply lines from being snapped. Brand's group is north of this snapshot. I'll show them in a minute, cleaning house a bit. But the Königsberg Garrison Division has taken over block push duties at the lakes from the nearly annihilated whatever reserve infantry division was helping Brandt up there. Vodrig's Corps is just happy to not have totally suffered the same fate, and I'm giving them a rest for now. Falkenrath's Corps is meanwhile busy looping around the south of the Maloa forts. Please be aware that Barth retreating here does not mean he is going to lose. Those super-heroic Polish counterattackers did their job and stopped the, admittedly ahistorically weak, German attack toward Wisna, aiming for behind Warsaw. Barth lost no brigades that I recall here, and he'll be pulling those troops back in good order to seriously mess with my attempts at cutting between them and Warsaw. My attack in East Prussia has essentially failed, and in my estimation I have almost no chance of actually winning the operation now. If I don't take Warsaw, I am definitely going to lose, maybe even if I do take Warsaw, and I'm not sure I've got time enough left to take it. I am entirely sure I don't have time or even forces enough to take literally every other orange city except Warsaw, which I would have to do to win. Anyway, this is still where Barth is probably going to beat me. Last, and now quite least, we'll move up north a little more to see Brandt's group clearing out that counter-blitzing cavalry one last time, which probably can't move, but I doubt Brandt's remaining division will be able to do much elsewhere anyway now. And then over to the upper left, you can see where I've finally gotten around to securing Elbing and rooting out those doughty Gdynia defenders. Gdynia! You know, I probably will never get a chance to pronounce that again, so. With that area cleared, I'll be rolling and shipping those divisions south, I suppose, but I doubt many of them will arrive in time to be much help punching through to Warsaw. Stats show us tailing off on our losses, which is nice, but we're still at about 8%. And Barth has a great chance of running that well past 10% before the end, even if I do take Warsaw. And even if I've taken enough other cities to win by also taking Warsaw, both of them being big ifs. Sure, Barth's casualties keep steadily climbing and will no doubt continue to do so, but that isn't going to win me the operation, nor is it going to help me defeat France, should I get that far. Since I ran the game in higher definition this time, here's the strategic map, which now doesn't have so many labels cluttering it, with the major cities and with my corps and army headquarters labeled. It might look like an impressive advance, And I'm not certainly going to lose, but I had better speed up substantially to have any chance of winning. And it's now Bart's turn of doom. Doom, 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 doom. Amen, 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 amen.